You're watching Pyro Media Network.
We just keep on walking, but never really getting nowhere. It's like we keep on talking, but never really saying nothing. On different sides, on different terms, stuck in a ways we ain't changing. Can't read your mind, and I've really tried. You won't let me in, like we're strangers. Say opposites, supposed to attract, but we both can tell it feels often. Should let it go, but somehow we fold, and it happens way too often. We're so different, we're so different. How can we end up we make me fit in? It's just like we're so different, we're so different. I don't quite understand you.
Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience is fruitful. Please feel free to visit our website to find out how you can join our growing family. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. Also, share so others may enjoy as well. And we hope you would consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
The moment the mask slips, clarity arrives. Not the cute kind, not the comfortable kind, the kind that exposes everything you were ignoring, performing, or protecting. Welcome back to the show. Let's get ready. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tammy Takes. I want to thank you guys for being a part of the show. I want to thank you guys for being here and watching. Now, I've gone back and forth about what this show was going to be about today because my executive producer, love him down, gives me the freedom to kind of decide what kind of show I want to produce and what I want to talk about, right? And if you've been following me from any of my other social media platforms, you know I can talk. And today's show was going to be about when the mask slips. And then I thought about another show idea I had going on in my head, but I wanted to do the show because this show comes out of a conversation I had with a client in my consultancy work. And what was interesting about this client and the experience for why I'm doing this show is when I first met with her, I had consulted her about some things that was happening within her organization about how to deal with some employee stuff. Now, she had left out some pertinent information about this employee that in our second consultation was made clear to me. And that's why I wanted to talk about when people's mask slips. You have a choice. I have a choice. We all have a choice when people decide to take off their mask. We can look at the people standing in front of us, right? With all of the history we have of them, all of the love we have of them, all of the understanding, all of the good times, all of the fun times. Everything is going to come rushing back to you when you're standing in front of somebody whose mask has slipped. And then we have to decide, what do I do in this moment? Do I pretend I don't see what I now see? Or do I ignore that and go back into nostalgia? The time we met, when we met, how we met, the trip we took, the kids we had together. You have to decide when you are standing in front of somebody whose mask has slipped. You have to decide. We have to decide. What do I do with this? What do I do with this? And she, like me, and many of us, depending on who is standing in front of us, whose mask has fallen in front of us. If it's a best friend, if it's a parent, if it's a sibling, if it's a husband, if it's a wife, if it's somebody you love, when that mask falls, we are left at a crossroad with what do we do? And so our first consultation, she had called me about an employee that she was having an issue with. And she said her employee kind of thinks very black and white. And she wanted some ways to kind of approach this conversation with her employee about how to engage in the workplace and how to engage with other employees and how to engage with clients, to not be so black and white, and that there is some beauty in gray, right? Like there's some nuance in the way that we live, in the way that we manage, in the way that we work. There's nuance there. And so we had a really good consult, and I followed back up with her and I said, how did it go? Did that work? Did the advice I give you work? And she said, it did. She said, it helped a whole lot. She's not as rigid. I can get her to move a little bit more. And so I thought, okay, good. You paid me a bit of money. We had a good consult. I was able to help you and help your organization. Wonderful. So some time had gone by and I had been seeing her and she started to look distressed and she talked about being sick. And so, I'd been checking in on her here and there, just making sure things were okay. But I could tell something was wrong with her. Now, when people say they're sick, most of us are not going to ask, right? We're not going to ask what's wrong. We're not going to get into anybody's personal health information that people don't care to share. But she was in the back of my mind and I knew she was not sick. And that's another thing. When we don't deal with what we need to deal with, whatever that hurt is, that is going to show up in your body. Your body is going to let you know something's wrong. I feel bad. I feel angry. I feel sad. I'm hurting. Even if you don't want to deal with that emotional fallout, your body is going to tell on you. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's going to tell. And so she didn't, I knew she was not feeling well. We're going back and forth and I was just checking in to make sure she was okay. And last week I got an email from her and she said, hey, I need another consult with you. Now, she works for an organization, so she could be meeting with me for a myriad of things, right? It doesn't have to be the same issue we talked about. It could be another issue happening in the workplace. Something else could be going on. So I said, sure, we can meet. So I scheduled some time with her and she gets on the consult and she said, the first thing I want to say is I didn't tell you the truth the first time we met. Now, typically, and consultants will tell you this, coaches will tell you this, mentors will tell you this. Hell, even your therapist may tell you this. We're never quite shocked when you open up your statement saying, I didn't tell the truth the first time. Because in addition to being a consultant that works with companies, I'm also a coach and a mentor. So everybody doesn't always tell the truth on the first time we get out the gate. So I said, okay. What did we leave out in that first conversation? She said, what I neglected to tell you about this employee who was difficult and very rigid and very black and white was that this employee was also one of my close friends of over 20 years. Now, when she gave me that information, immediately I started going back in my notes and looking like, okay, what did we talk about exactly? Going back in my head, what did we talk about exactly? I had a general idea of what I said for her to do regarding the issue she came to me for. But I started going back in my head, like, what did I say? So I said, keep talking. I'm just going to be taking some notes and reading my notes from our last consult. And she said, we've been friends for 20 years. And she gave me the backstory about like a friend was having a hard time. She and her boss have a really good working relationship. And I want to say probably had, because there now needs to be repair done to that relationship. And this is why I say, when the mask falls, you can't ignore what's in front of you. Because if you don't deal with the person that's standing in front of you, you leave them with the ability to wreak havoc in your life. So she had built a really good working relationship with her boss, and she'd hired her friend. Her friend was having some hard times, and she's one of these women. Now, we know women say, I'm a girl's girl. She really is a girl's girl. She really does look out for other women in every aspect of her life, both professional and personal. So her friend was having a hard time. She went to her boss, advocated for her boss to hire her friend. And her friend was going out on vacation, and her friend was in the company apartment. So the field that they work in, the company has housing. And she said, well, that was fine. She said they've been friends for like 20 years. So she told her friend, okay, well, make sure to give me the key. Something she was supposed to have when the friend moved into the apartment that she didn't get because they're friends, they're coworkers. You don't think you need to police your friends the way you would probably be policing another employee. So the friend's going off on vacation. She said, well, that's fine. Maintenance needs to get in the building. So just give me the key and I'll let maintenance in. And she said her friend went nuclear on her, started going off, just angry and nasty and vicious. And she said she got off the phone. You ever had one of those phone calls where the other person and you think, girl, is you okay? Because you know who you're talking to? I know you were talking to me like this. So you start looking off at the phone. So she did one of those. She said she got off the phone stunned because in the 20 years that they'd been friends, she'd never seen that side of her friend. Never. Now, I'm just relaying what she told me. Do I think she never saw that side? No. I don't think you can hide who you are for 20 years. I think there's probably been slips along the way. But depending on who that rage is directed to, you may have seen that rage and rationalized that rage, right? So if your girlfriend and that rage is directed towards a man, you will write that off because men, right? Or if that rage is directed towards somebody both of you don't like, you both have, not good feelings about the person that this rage is directed to, you will write it off. So she said her friend went off, wouldn't give her the key, wouldn't let her in, right? So she had to reschedule maintenance and all this other things. And she was just thinking, what just happened here? Like, what just happened? But her friend didn't just stop at reaming her out about even asking for the key to, again, company property. This is not her personal home that she's asking for this key. This is company property. So the friend calls her boss and begins to run her down to her boss. Listen to me. This is a friend of 20 years, a friend that she hired and gave a job and gave an opportunity when her friend was down on her luck. So the friend calls the boss and is saying all kind of negative things, just planting seeds of doubt with the boss. The boss gets off the phone with the friend and calls her and says, what is happening? Now, typically what men do, male bosses, whether it's in the workplace or even in your personal life, when the girls are fighting, they just want the girls to make up, right? Like most male bosses, they don't want to get involved with the girl things. They don't want to deal with it. They just want you to make up. And so she calls her boss, runs her down, and starts planting seeds of doubts about who my client is, the kind of person my client is, right? Now, there's going to be two parts to this, right? Because there's some other parts hanging out here. But who this person is, who my client is, she's not who the boss thinks she is. She can't believe she asked her for that, all just running her down. So my client is still at home reeling from the conversation she had with her friends and how her friends spoke to her and engaged with her. And now her boss is calling her. And her boss is repeating back to her the awful things her friend of 20 years just said about her to him. And she's in the middle of this, almost like an emotional crisis. One, for somebody who she respects and likes, which is her boss. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been there for over 13 years, 12 to 13 years. And a friend that she thought she knew for 20 years. And she's sitting as her boss is telling her these things, and she's grappling with two things here. How much of what her friend said actually has the power to shift her boss's perception of her? How much? She doesn't know. She doesn't know at this time if it's going to shift anything. Did he believe any of it? Why did he entertain it? Why did he even listen to it? So that's the question she has going on in her head about her boss. Somebody she's had a fantastic working relationship with for the past 12 to 13 years. And on the other side of this is the friend who lived with her. Because when the friend got the job, Before she moved into the company housing, her friend lived with her. A friend that lived with her, a friend that she loved, a friend that she helped both emotionally, financially, gave this person a place to stay, gave her a job with housing, all of the things. And she's sitting there thinking, what just happened here? What just happened here? Now, when I tell a little bit more about the story in the second half of the show, you'll understand why her friend behaved this way. But I wanted to start this show off telling you that story because some of you right now watching this show, it's not your boss, and maybe it's not a good friend. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's your husband. Maybe it's your wife. Maybe it is your coworker. Maybe it is your pastor. Maybe it's your priest. But it's somebody in your life where their mask slipped. And when their mask slipped, you did what my client did. You rationalized. You excused. You pretended it wasn't as bad as it is. You pretended you didn't see what your eyes saw. You talked yourself out of what the person was showing you. Now, I don't want to use the term narcissist and narcissistic. My God, I feel like we have worn that out to the point of when you are truly dealing with a narcissist, you won't even know. Because if we label everybody a narcissist, then nobody is a narcissist, right? So maybe the person in your life isn't a narcissist, clinically diagnosed or otherwise. But maybe what they have been doing is hiding who they are. And I believe when we hide who we are, right? When we have to pretend to be something that we're not, there's only so much we can do that for. And when we hide who we are, what is behind that is a deep insecurity about who we are. So we don't believe that people will love us in our mess. We don't believe that people would love us if they knew that we weren't perfect. We don't believe that people would love us if we weren't made up and done and professional and clean and all the things. And so we hide who we are from people. And the reason why we hide who we are is because there's something about us that doesn't believe we're worthy of love, worthy of acceptance. And so we create characters. You know, there's a thing that says life is a stage. Life is a stage, and we're all playing a part. And I have casted myself in roles, much like how you have casted yourself in roles. I casted myself in the role of wife the day I decided to marry my husband, my ex-husband. I decided that was the role I was going to play. I casted myself in the role of mother when I decided to be a parent to the children that I have. I casted myself in the role of employee when I decided to go work for a company, an organization, or somebody else. I casted myself in that role. I decided to cast myself in the role of entrepreneur when I left corporate to go do my own work, right? So to some degree, we are all playing roles of ourselves. And depending on who we are, where we are, people are going to get different versions of ourselves. But fundamentally, who you are should be at the base of all those other roles. So fundamentally, if you're a kind person, you're a kind wife, you're a kind employee, you're a kind mother, you're a kind friend. Why? Because kindness sits at the base of who you are. If you are a loud person, you're going to be a loud wife. You're going to be a loud mother. You're going to be a loud coworker or worker. You're going to be a loud friend because fundamentally, you're just a loud person. If you are an exuberant person, if you have a bubbly personality, you're going to be the wife that the fellas go, oh, Lord, he's bringing Tammy again. Y'all know how Tammy does, right? You're just going to be that person. Your kids are going to be embarrassed because you're coming to the game and you're going to be the loud mom. And it's because fundamentally, that is who you are. So even in the roles that you cast yourself in, you're still going to show up fundamentally as who you are. Now, that does not mean that there's going to be parts of our personalities that we don't share with everybody in our lives, right? The friend that I am or I was to my good friend Lee, who passed, I'm not that friend with my best friend Shaka. They both love me. I both love them, and we're friends too. I'm friends to both of them, but I'm not the same friend to each of those people. Each of them requires something different from me, and I know what they require of me, and that's how I show up. So I know that people are going to show up to some degree in the world with some mask, but the mask shouldn't be the thing that hides who you are fundamentally. Don't confuse playing a role with wearing the mask. Don't confuse playing the role with wearing the mask, because I can play the role and still fundamentally be who I am. You can play the role and fundamentally be who you are. But if the mask slips, whether that mask slips from you, because sometimes our own mask slips, right? Now, the show is about this client and her friend and the mask falling off her friend. But sometimes in our lives, our mask slips. And we can no longer hide behind the version of ourselves that kept us comfortable but exhausted. Because when you wear the mask, you may be comfortable. It may be easier to put on the mask and go out into the world. But I promise you, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be exhausted. Now, we're going to run to a commercial break. And when we come back from the commercial break, I will tell you why it is important that when the mask slips, that you look at what is in front of you and not pretend it's not there. Be right back after the break.
Hey, it's Pastor Kim from It's Just Kim Live Show, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
What's going on, y'all? It's Kwame Speaks from Kwame Speaks Live, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
It's Nicole D. Vick from Nicole D. Vick Live, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Welcome back to the show. Okay. So in the first half of the show, I told you what happened and how her friend went to her boss, said all the things. She's now dealing with the fallout of what her boss says or believes. And now she's dealing with what does she do with this friend, right? So this friend, because she didn't, when the friend showed her who she was, when that mask slipped, because she didn't look at what was in front of her, because she decided to tell herself a story based on history and nostalgia, her friend was allowed to create not just doubt with her boss, but doubt with her coworkers. Because here's the reality, right? Your boss has known you for 12 or 13 years. This friend has known you for 20. So when this friend goes into the workplace to your boss and other coworkers and say, oh, you guys don't know her like I know her. I've known her for 20 years. Are they more inclined to believe her? Probably. Because you've known her for longer than I have. So maybe you know this part of we're going to call her Nicole. Maybe you know a part of Nicole that I don't know. And you would know a part of Nicole that I would know because, we have a good working relationship, but I don't know her outside of work. And maybe she is who you're saying she is because she refused to look at her friend and see who she was when the mask slipped. And so the friend is on vacation and friend comes back. Things are tense. Things are tense in the office, and she is, by default, her friend's boss. And she starts leading from behind, right? So she is hyper aware of her friend's attitude at work. She's hyper aware of when her friend comes. She's hyper aware of when her friend leaves. She can see that there's been a shift, because what happens, especially in workplaces, but just in general, whenever there's conflict, the energy in the space shifts. And whatever space you have to be in with that person, it feels heavy. It's not that it's just uncomfortable because people are trying to navigate and how to talk. The energy feels heavy. Everything about the space feels heavy. So her friend normally there was a workers' comp that her friend would handle, because you basically you do the audit, you answer the questions, you send the timesheet. It's a pretty innocuous thing that most companies have to do. Doesn't take a whole lot. You just ask for, hey, give me the hours so I can report it. It's kind of like one of those done deals. Now, that was usually what her friend did, okay? This time, her friend decides to put it on her desk, her chair to do. Now, there's already discomfort between the friends. There's already this energy in the office. She doesn't want to kind of like flex and say, why are you giving this to me? This is your job. She doesn't want to do that, right? She doesn't want to create a scene. So she takes it, calls her payroll person and say, I need the hours for these people for this location. Give me the hours. Whoop-de-whoop, whoop-de-whoop. And this was the universe looking out for her. Because the truth is, when you operate from a place of integrity and people try to malign you, God, source, universe, ancestors, whatever you believe in, will take care of you. It will look out for you. And this was the universe's way of looking out for her. Because but for her friend trying to be nasty and mean and flex, like, you're not the only one with the boss's ear. You're not the only one with the approval of everybody in this office. I can make it uncomfortable for you too. So she gets the payroll, gets the numbers, and notices that her friend has hours for a location that she doesn't work in. Now, the payroll person didn't pay attention to it. She just gave her the hours. Long story short, her friend had been stealing from the company. Lots of money. And stealing by way of wage theft, putting down hours for locations she had not worked. And her fatal mistake was submitting hours for a 4-day weekend that my friend was covering for. So she was covering her friend's 4-day weekend, and that friend submitted a timesheet in another location with hours for the week leading up to, saying she worked all of these hours. Now, this is found out, and she's thinking, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad, because she's already dealing with a boss who already has allowed seeds of doubt to be placed in his head about who she is, right? And she's thinking this is going to be bad. And it was. And it was bad. And she said to her boss, if you don't want to handle it in terms of, obviously, this is going to be termination, because this is you're stealing. If you don't want to handle it, I can handle it. So her boss says, no, he'll handle it. The boss goes in to have the conversation, and she does what a lot of women in corporate America do. Now, I'm going to say not women who look like me, because we don't get away with this. She started crying. Got the boss to change his mind about, all of the evidence that was right in front. And boss comes out, and he just looks distraught, because he doesn't handle these things. My client does. She's the operations person. She handles all these things. And so my client says to her boss, you have to do this, or this is not going to work. So eventually the friend is let go and it's no longer in the company, but the wreckage that she left behind is still there. And so my client was calling me, one, to kind of help her navigate her feelings around what has happened, to deal with how she didn't show up for herself, how she ignored all the signs, how she didn't look at what was in front of her. Because what she said, as we got to talking, I said, I think the irrational response about you not going into her apartment had to do with the fact that you knew what her financial situation was. And had you walked into that apartment, you would have been walking into an apartment of somebody whose paycheck would not have matched what was inside that house or inside that apartment, because she was stealing money. So her apartment looked nice. Everything looked great because she was stealing money. And she didn't want you to walk in, because you're friends for 20 years. You knew what her financial situation was when you got her the job. You were her boss. You knows what she makes in money. So it would have been odd to walk into this apartment and just see packages lined up against the wall. It would have been odd to walk into the apartment and see a new bed, new furniture, new patio set. Because you, as her friend, would have thought, where are you getting the money to buy this? Where are you getting this from? And so when you tried to go into her apartment while she was on vacation, she would not allow that to happen, because you would have seen her. And that reaction was so that you didn't see her. You didn't see who she was. You didn't see the truth of who she was, because you probably would have figured out she was stealing. If not stealing, she had a boyfriend or a man or something. Maybe she was missing. But she knows who you are. She knows the way your integrity is set up, that if you came into that apartment and you saw it, you would have gone to your boss. You would have fired her. Something would have started clicking for you. And so you would have known something is up. And so she couldn't let you see her. But her mask did slip. It slipped in that phone conversation that she had with you, where she talked to you like she didn't even know you. It slipped when she went to your boss and told your boss horrible things about who you were. And you ignored seeing the mask slip. And you ignoring seeing the mask slip, that wreckage is now left for you to clean up. Now you have to repair the relationship with your boss. And can that be repaired, right? Because there's a part of you that feels betrayed by your boss, that your boss would even entertain it, that he would even believe any of it. When you've helped him build this company from 1 to 2 buildings to the 4 or 5 you now have, right? So now you're dealing with the wreckage of losing a friend of 20 years. And even when our friends or our family members or people we know, even when they do the worst, we don't immediately go from love to hate. That's not how it works with the human heart, the human condition. You're still going to mourn that relationship. You're still going to mourn that friend. But now with mourning that relationship, you also are having to deal with the wreckage of what it brought, because you refused to look when the mask slipped. Masks are heavy. They're heavy. Some of them are built from childhood trauma, the workplace politics, patriarchal expectations, racial trauma, perfectionism. We're all wearing masks and they get heavy. But when they slip on the people we love or the people we think we know, we have to have the courage to look. We have to have the courage to look. And I say this as a person who has horrible avoidance. I don't like looking at the things that hurt me. I don't like revisiting harmful things, bad relationships, broken friendships. I don't like it. It is painful. It is painful. But what I have learned is that if I don't look at it, and if I don't deal with it, and if I keep it around, it will create more havoc in my life than is necessary. And as I'm on the phone with my client, I could feel for her because I had a recent, I would say in the last year, a recent friendship collaboration with a friend of mine. And I myself had seen the mask slip. And so I can speak to this because I've gone through this. I saw when the mask slipped. And funny enough, when the mask slipped, I said to myself, I was sitting in Starbucks on the phone, and I did exactly that. I looked at my phone and I went, did I know this person? Who is this person? And because the version that that person had given to me did not resemble the person on the phone, but intuitively I knew that's really who this person is. That's really who this person is. But I, like many people, and maybe you do this as you're watching the show, I have projected myself onto people. You project your goodness onto people. You project your kindness onto people. You project understanding. You project love. You project that onto the people, even though that's not who they are. But when my friend's mask slipped, I didn't pretend that it didn't. When it slipped, she went behind me, called, and at the time, it wasn't even a mutual friend of ours, called a woman she knew and was bad-mouthing me to this woman. I had done nothing to this person but be good to them. Nothing. But the reality is, those people, my previous friend and my client's friend, when people are living a life where they have masked themselves off to everybody else, right? And they're engaging with you, and it doesn't matter whether they know you for 2 years or 20, 2 years or 20, they hate you more. Listen to me. They hate you more when they are engaging with you and they realize you are exactly who you say you are. That you may be where you may be performing the roles that you have chosen in life, the role of wife, the role of employee, the role of entrepreneur, the role of mother. You may be engaged in those roles, but you're not in those roles wearing a mask. Who you are is who you are. So when they meet you and they know they have the mask on, and so they assume everybody has a mask on. Well, everybody's doing it. You know, I saw this one TikTok that said some of you are not getting invited to the party because a lot of you don't do. Okay, a lot of you don't do that, and so because they are wearing the mask, they assume you are, and the more time they spend with you, again, doesn't matter the time limit, 10 months to 10 years, the more time they spend, they're looking for your mask to slip without realizing that you aren't wearing a mask. You are who you are. And so her friend was dealing with the fact that her friend that she had known for 20 years was exactly who she was. She was the same Nicole at work as she was in their friendship, as she was in church, as she was in school. She was no different. She was operating in roles, but she was not wearing a mask. But she was wearing the mask. And so because she was wearing the mask, it almost makes them angry that you aren't. And so the friend's gone, and now she's dealing with the cleanup of this boss. And she's saying, I don't know if I can continue to work. This is why it's important for you, when somebody's mask falls, look, see it for what it is. See them for who they are. Don't give yourself another story. Don't tell yourself another story. Don't create another narrative. Look at what's in front of you. So now she's left with having to clean up this relationship now with her boss, because the relationship changed. The minute that her boss allowed her friend to call and allowed her to dump all of that on him about her character, who she was, and the minute that that shifted the dynamics in the workplace, now the relationship with her boss has changed. So now she's not only lost a 20-year relationship, she's now having to repair this 12-year working relationship, one that was good with mutual respect, love, and kindness. She's having to repair that. And so the second part of my consult, she was like, you know, we may need to have you come in. And I said, listen, I can offer some mediation for you. Now, the thing to know about my client is that she met me when I was doing classes around anti-Blackness, and fundamental to that work was empathy. And one of the things that I said to her, she said, I kept going back to your book because once the mask fell, I started to go back to the book, and I could see how I was engaging with a friend who fundamentally did not have empathy. She didn't have empathy for me. She didn't have it for herself. She said, and so I was struggling. Like, is this the time for me to give empathy? And one of the things I said to her, and it's a thing that I say to everybody that come to me around the book or around the scorecards, more specifically around the scorecards, that when you're in conflict, whether that conflict is at work, whether that conflict is in front of you with your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your children, your coworkers, your friends, doesn't matter the conflict. In the middle of that conflict, right, you have to ask yourself this question, and depending on what that other person has coming at you, is this a moment for me to give empathy out, or is this a moment for me to turn that empathy in? Do I give empathy to myself in this moment? Do I engage with myself in an empathetic way in this moment? And the reason why I say depending on what's coming, because sometimes I have been in conflict with people and I'm listening to them, and I can tell in this moment that what is coming at me is directed at me, but what they're engaging in and what they're feeling is sadness, hurt, and pain. And so even though they're yelling at me, I could feel in the moment that this really isn't about me. This is about them, right? And so this is a moment for me to engage and stay present in this conversation, stay present in this moment, and extend empathy to them because they need it. I can hear the hurt. I can hear the sadness. It's coming out as anger. It's coming out as frustration, as lashing, but I could feel in this moment what the person on the other side of this conversation, the other side of this argument needs of me is empathy. And I said, you were too concerned about whether or not the person who was creating so much harm for you, not just in your personal relationship. You know, it's one thing if you're girlfriends or your friends and you fall out, but she was creating this in your workplace that could impact your, but listen, we are in an economy right now. Nobody cannot afford to be without a job, right? Whether it is stressful and you decide to leave it or they decide to part ways with you. Ain't nobody got it like that to decide to be without a job. And I said, but this impacts you in a way. And I said, you were so focused because you thought my book, The Empathy Gap, It Is Black and White, which is talking to people about cultivating empathy and teaching you about how empathy breaks down in you. You thought that this was the moment for the empathy out, and that was a moment for the empathy in. One of the sections on the self-empathy scorecard, I tell you to lean into your intuition, to trust yourself, to believe in yourself. And so if you find yourself in a situation, in a friendship, in a relationship where somebody's mask has fallen, don't talk yourself out of it. When you drop the mask, when they drop their mask and then you drop the mask, you stop carrying emotions that were never meant for you. You stop managing other people's reactions to you. And you start managing your own healing around what just happened. This is liberation. disguised as loss. You can decide to keep wearing the mask, or you can decide that it's time to be liberated and heal. I see you now. And to some degree, when their mask falls, so do ours. So not only can you see them, you can then see you. Who are you outside of the relationship with them? Who are you outside of the role of mother? Because if your child is the person whose mask is slipped, that mask falling reveals them, but it also reveals something about you. Because sometimes the mask we wear is the mask of hero, savior, of other people, when we really need to be saving ourselves.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.